Welcome back to the Perfect Father podcast. I'm going to turn my phone on because I want to read you something. I'm doing this at night, so I'm a little tired, but I want to get out all of the episodes concerning Psalm 23. It's been a very emotional day. Sometimes we have these days that are just amazing, and this happened to be one of them. So I wanted to share a little brief story with you that motivates me in what I'm sharing with you. Our invitation is to be aware and assured from Psalm 23 verse 4. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, and your rod and your staff, they comfort me. I've been walking with one of my children through a difficult season, and I was leaving their school this afternoon and very emotional. And I got in the car and turned the key and cranked the engine, and the lyrics from the song Reckless Love, actually the bridge in the song, came on. I didn't prompt the song, I didn't push play. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. I wrote the principal and told her, I said that I witnessed this kind of care and pursuit from her and her team to my child. And I just sat in the car and wept because it was such an expression of God's love, watching her in particular pursue Him, challenge Him, listen to Him, care for Him. So I wanted to make sure that she knew that, and I told her, I said, there's no greater compliment that I could give, because I want that to be said of me, that I'm loving as He loves me. You know, the great apostle John, he's the only one of the 12 that historically we're told wasn't martyred. He died of an old age, and when he was in his 80s and he was being drugged into the temple on a cot, he would say as he passed the crowd, little children love one another. Little children love one another. Little children love one another. And part of the reason that I seek the Lord is I want to keep my heart right. Psalm 23 is a great example of that. As I understand, as I reflect on, as I accept, I lack nothing, I shall not want. I can love others, not looking for anything in return. I'm not wanting anything. I can be content because I know that person, I'm in green pasture, that person, that circumstance is preordained. I can continue to return to Him for the refreshing of my soul, so that darkness that I tend to accumulate doesn't overshadow His grace and mercy operating through me. And this passage today is important because it tells us, it's kind of like the first part of the passage is preparation of, just before we step out the door. And then the psalmist is saying, look, you're about to step into the shadow of death, the valley of the shadow of death. And wanted us to be sober-minded as we went into that, aware of it, but also assured that His rod and His staff comforts us, because sometimes we're shocked by evil because maybe we're just comforting ourselves that the stakes aren't as high. I was talking to a colleague, and he might listen to this podcast, and he was concerned about his daughter riding a motorcycle with her husband, and he had actually said something about that before they got married, that he didn't really want that, and then he found out they were, and obviously a concerned father, and all I could tell him was, well, I invite you to do what I do over the people I care about, my family. Everyone God puts in my way is pray serious prayers of blessing and protection, because there is the real presence of evil. And that's really where our reflection starts in John 10:10, which is both parts, but it starts with that there's an enemy that is assigned to steal, kill, and destroy. Right? That's evil's assignment to itself, is to steal, kill, and destroy. And so we need to be fully aware that that is present. That's why I'm very serious about prayers of protection over you. And when I say that, I'm talking about binding all forces of evil. The last part of my prayer of blessing and protection is any attempts of evil to steal, kill, and destroy, bound in Jesus' name, rendered powerless by his death, descension, resurrection, and ascension. And I actually have a little fun with it. I'll say the place of my intercession is holy ground, and I say to evil in every attempt and every scheme today, you shall not trespass. That's actually a line from one of the Lord of the Rings where Gandalf is standing in front of a demon. You might remember it. He screams out, you shall not trespass. And I say that in the name of Jesus and in the authority, full authority of Christ that's in me. I tell my kids before they drive, I said, and I have most of them, all of them now. Recently, my last one is driving. I said, before you get in that car, I want you to remember two things, and they can repeat this to you. They say, pray and expect people to do really stupid things. There's the real presence of evil out to steal, kill, and destroy. So I take that very serious. I don't want to be shocked by that. I don't want to be deceived by that. Second part of John 10:10, part B, is the invitation to be fully assured that he's come to give us life and life to its fullest. That this great shepherd, his rod and his staff, does comfort us. What a great image. The staff being what drives away all of the predators, the wolves. And they're the presence of real wolves. But also the rod that taps me back into place. Taps you back into place, lovingly tapping us, hey, this is a way, walk in. And occasionally we're told that shepherds, if there was a sheep that continued to roam off time after time, they would actually break one of the lamb's legs and carry that sheep till that leg was mended to teach him a lesson. That may sound kind of harsh, but I know there's seasons in my life where our perfect Father let me get to the point where I had to be carried, where the consequences had to teach me a lesson. His rod and his staff comforts us. We want to be fully assured in that space. We want to be sober-minded. The psalmist talks about there are people that are treacherous without cause, or another translation says wantingly treacherous, people that have given themselves fully over to evil at this season in their life. I don't know their destiny, only the Lord knows that, but I know this, I'll stay out of their way. I won't be taken advantage of. God gives us discernment in those situations. So we're sober-minded, we're fully aware of the presence of evil while being completely assured that he has us. There's a scene in the movie Cinderella Man, because before I get to that, one of the challenges I say to myself is the stakes are high. And I mean that in the positive. That he's given us life and life to its fullest, and in the negative. There's an enemy that's trying to steal, kill, and destroy. So the stakes are high. There's this scene in Cinderella Man, great movie, and James J. Braddock is the boxer in the Great Depression. And if you remember the story, if you haven't seen it, I encourage you to watch the movie. But he's lost everything. And one point lost his kids, had to move into with relatives, and he got them back, and he could barely feed them. They were eating bologna and just struggling to give them milk. And his trainer comes to him one day because he had hurt his arm and he was no longer boxing, and he could only get work every few days. And he said, I've got a fight for you. I've got a match. And he told him about it. And it was the runner-up for the heavyweight championship, the contender. And he basically told him, look, the other fighter dropped out, and they know that not just anybody will take this fight on one day's notice. And of course, he was willing to do so because he said, this will keep my kids off the streets for a few more months. And he gets in that ring, and he gets knocked down, and his face is bloody, and all of a sudden you start seeing flashbacks occur in his mind where he's seeing his hungry children. And he stands up and he smiles at his opponent, and his opponent looks at him like, what is wrong with this man? Why is he smiling? And he's smiling because he realized the stakes were high. He wasn't going to be knocked down. He wasn't going to stay down. The stakes are too high for us and those that we care about. Great movie. He ends up winning that fight, and the rest is history. You'll have to watch it, but I've thought about that scene several times. To stay in the ring, in the midst of my own failures or struggles or mistakes. The stakes are high. Get back up. Intercede. Seek His face. All that I'm encouraging you and I to do. That our hearts may be prepared, that we could love others, that we could defend others, that we could advocate for others like this principal did for my son today. Let's imagine how this full assurance of His care will provide the necessary strength to face challenging people and circumstances with the fearless peace to navigate the shadow of death as we await His redemptive outcomes. We spend a lot of time waiting. The situation I described to you today was months of walking a particular circumstance out. And it's not over. There's much left to be done, but it was the experience of a redemptive outcome today. And the challenge for us is to stay at it, to engage it, to be aware that there are oppositional forces, but none in comparison to the resurrection life that operates in us. The last scene I want to mention from a movie, just because it's one of my favorites, is in Gladiator. And Maximus, who is now a gladiator, if you know the story, is facing Commodus for the first time. And Commodus has him take off his mask. And Commodus, the evil Caesar, is saying all the things that he did to Maximus's family when he killed them. I won't get into the rhetoric, but it was dark. And Maximus looks him in the eye and says, the time for honoring yourself will soon come to an end. And I thought, what a picture of fearless assurance. The time for honoring yourself will soon come to an end. There is an end of this. There is a redemptive outcome. There is justice. And in that period of waiting for that redemptive outcome, we face the shadow of death every day with full assurance that He takes care of us. I love you. Goodbye.